Thank you for a day of rest. It's truly welcomed each week. Father, thank you for everything you give us. Thank you for your blessings throughout the week. Thank you for family, for friends, for guidance. Thank you for being in our lives, Lord. Lord, I pray that you'd bless everybody here today, bless everybody watching online. And Lord, I pray that you'd bless JP and the teaching he gives us today. Bless him for all his hard work this week. Bless your holy name, Lord. Amen.
Good. I mean, come in. Okay. Sorry to everyone online. It's technical difficulties today. Ashley's in America. She's trying to do things remotely and get things set up. In the first part, there's not actually going to be any change in the cameras because the audio won't go through for some reason. Hopefully get that changed in the second part. Okay then, so Torah portion, Noach. In this, I want to look at something really interesting that comes up, because throughout the book of Genesis, we've got a period of time when the Torah wasn't given, and yet people had a relationship with Yehovah. They walked with Yehovah. They were righteous before him. They were men of faith. So I want to take a little bit of a look at that. Romans 5:12-14, it says, "For this reason, even as through one man sin did enter into the world, and death through sin, thus death spread to all men, because all sinned." Okay, so everybody sinned, and as a consequence, death affected them. For until the Torah, sin was in the world, but sin is not reckoned when there is no Torah. So for Adam, he'd been given the instructions from Yehovah. He'd been given Torah from Yehovah. Torah is not really law, teaching, and instruction. It comes from a word which is yara, which means basically to disseminate something. So it's the disseminations of Yehovah is what the Torah is. But sin was not reckoned when there is no Torah. So when Adam sinned, he knew that he shouldn't be doing what he did. However, when there is no instruction given, Yehovah doesn't hold people accountable for their sin in the same way. But death is a consequence of sin. So if you sin, you're going to die. It's like if I say to you, you work somewhere, and I say, don't touch this thing, otherwise you're going to get burned. And if you do that, and you're dangerous, and you're reckless, and you touch it, and you get burned, I'm going to sack you. Until that instruction was given, if you touch that thing, you were going to get burned. But before the instruction was given, you weren't going to get sacked also. And it's kind of the same thing here. But death reigned from Adam until Moshe. Okay, so they hadn't been given the Torah, but death still reigned because it's a consequence of sin. Even over those who had not sinned according to the likeness of the transgression of Adam. Because Adam had been given the Torah. These people had not been given the Torah, so their transgressions were not actually in the likeness of his sin. And this is the position that Noach's in, it's the position that Abraham's in, that Yitzchak, Yaakov, all these people who walk with Yehovah and they have a relationship with him, are men of faith. The first verse of the Torah portion says, this is the genealogy of Noach. Noach was a righteous man, perfect in his generations. Noach walked with Elohim. From Adam until Moshe, there was no Torah, but Noach was counted as a righteous man. Noach brought forth these three sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. We looked at this word here for genealogy, toldot. It means bringing forth. So it actually comes from that verb that you can see there, yalad. Okay, Yalad is to bring forth. Toldot is the things that Noach brought forth, which is why you will see after these things descriptions of who he was, the life that he lived, not necessarily just the people who come from him. His genealogy is his Toldot, but his Toldot isn't his genealogy, if that makes sense. What I want to concentrate on is this idea. Noach was a righteous man, and Noach walked with Elohim. Because I want to look at this idea of righteousness being accounted to us on account of faith. Genesis 15:6, we see the same thing is said of Abraham. He believed in Yehovah and he reckoned it to him for righteousness. Now we're told of Abraham that he followed everything that Yehovah disseminated, and this is something that we're going to see of all of these men. They didn't have the Torah. However, when Yehovah told them to do something, they did it. They were men of faith. Hebrews 11 verse 4 says, by belief Abel offered to Elohim a greater sacrifice than Cain, through which he obtained witness that he was righteous, Elohim witnessing of his gifts. He knew what he was supposed to do in respect to burnt offerings. And actually, the knowledge of Torah, or the knowledge of the instructions that these people had, all seem to be centered around offerings given to Yehovah. Noach was aware of what was clean and what was unclean, for example. Why is that relevant? Okay, these are things that can either be offered to Yehovah or not offered to Yehovah. He knew these things before Yehovah gave the command, I've given you the moving creatures to eat as I gave you the green plants. He knew those things beforehand. So what relevance did they have? It was all to do with offerings. We see Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. We see them all offering burnt offerings. So they had a knowledge of what was acceptable to offer to Yehovah. It says here that he obtained witness that he was righteous by the fact that he followed this instruction. Cain didn't, did he? He offered of the plants. He offered of the fruit of the ground. Elohim himself witnessed of his gifts, witnessed of his offerings that he gave. We're told that the law is a witness for or against us. Okay, it will witness whether we are righteous or whether we are not. Now, I want to take you back in time to the year 2010. I'm going to tell you a little bit about my own faith that I've walked in. Well before I knew the Torah, well before I knew the scriptures, well before Elohim had revealed himself to me as who he was, revealed himself to me as Yehovah. Well, back in 2010, I can remember that I was watching something by this guy. This guy's mainstream Christian. He teaches against the Torah. He teaches against the Shabbat. Certainly wouldn't recommend anyone watching his teachings. You don't go to a poisoned well thinking that you know when it's going to be poisoned and not poisoned. You just avoid it. But anyway, before I knew of Yehovah, before I'd read the scriptures, I was watching something by this guy, and it was called The Science of God. And during this period in my life, I've mentioned before that I'd prayed for wisdom, or rather I'd used this substance called vibhuti, which is supposed to manifest into reality what you ask for. And I had asked for wisdom. It was in about 2008, early 2008. By the time 2010 had come around, I'd been studying all sorts of stuff. And this guy's teaching on the science of God struck a chord with me where I was at that moment. I was looking into things about the holographic universe and all sorts of things like that. But I was trying to come to a knowledge of what righteousness was at the time when I was watching the teaching by this guy. I can remember something really bizarre happening while this teaching was on. I heard, and I can't quite remember what it was, whether it was the TV or radio, something outside the room, but I heard very distinctly, "This is the voice of God." Now, when I'm relating this, I'm not saying that it was Elohim. Through all of these things that I'm going to talk about, what I'm suggesting is that Elohim walked me through it, and he took me out of all of that nonsense. Okay, these sort of things actually smack very much of spiritual deception, but Elohim used these things. He used the bad that was going on for good. And when I heard that this is the voice of God, to me, it was this incredibly significant thing at the time, because of just this confluence of things which are all coming together. And I remember saying in my head, if that is the voice of God, I want you to confirm it. I want you to do it again. And immediately upon that happening, something else said, some other external source, TV, radio, whatever it was, said, "This is the voice of God." I was like, okay, so this moment had been highlighted as this significant moment to me. As I say, it smacks of spiritual deception. I'm not saying that Elohim had anything to do with it, but he used these things for good. And the understanding that I was coming to at the time, again, this isn't actually a biblically accurate understanding. It's got grains of truth in. It's not biblically accurate. The idea that I had in my head was that if you do what is right, you walk in accordance with what is right, you have almost kind of a divine protection over your life. However, I understood Elohim at the time, essentially like a divine protection over your life, and you didn't have to worry about anything, and everything would just work itself out to be good in the end. And I remember I had this tall glass bong. Used to smoke cannabis at the time. I had this tall glass bong, and as I had this kind of significant moment where this understanding really seemed to become deep-seated in me, the bong started to fall over, and obviously glass bong full of smelly bong water falls over and smashes. This is a terrible thing, and it was within my reach to reach out and grab it, but this understanding was forming in my mind that if you're walking in accordance with what is right, then you don't really need to worry about things that seem to be bad will work out in a way that's fine. And as I saw it falling over, I remember just thinking, this is going to be fine, just let it fall over. And it fell over in such a weird way, so that it didn't smash. It fell on something that caught it in a really, really weird way that you wouldn't have expected it to happen. And I remember it being significant to me, being well, there you go, see? It's fine. All you need to do is believe that this is fine. I remember very soon after this being at a party. I was in a bedroom at a party in my friend Eamon's flat. And I remember hearing an argument going on outside the room. So I walked out of the room, and there's a guy there called James Millington arguing with his girlfriend because he'd taken some of a substance known as GHB. Think of it as super alcohol. And his girlfriend was arguing with him, saying, well, you promised that you weren't going to take GHB anymore. And he was, as the GHB that he'd taken was taking effect, he was getting more and more out of it. And I don't know why she chose to do this, but her form of protest at him taking the GHB was to uncover her breasts in the middle of the party. And this just sent him over the edge. He was having the GHB effect, and he just kind of lost it, and he was just trashing everything that was in the flat. My friend Damon, whose flat it was, went over to him to stop him, and he starts swinging his fists around. He smacks Eamon in the face. Eamon didn't react to it. He just kind of continued trying to calm him down. But all of these things were in my head, this idea that if you are righteous, you do what's right, you're at peace sort of thing, then no harm can actually come to you, and you can walk through reality like with this divine protection over you. Again, not scripturally sound idea, but it's what I thought in my head at the time. And I went over to him and I took him by the shoulder, and I was just talking really calm, trying to be kind and compassionate towards him. And I was just saying, you don't need to be doing this, listen, this has got out of hand, hasn't it? Let's just forget that all this has happened. These things happen, life goes on. We'll all just get together and have a good time. We'll have a good party. I can remember seeing in his eyes like real anger, and like he seemed like he was just lost and distant from reality, and then he kind of come back to reality. He could look at me in the eyes and see that I was being kind and compassionate towards him, and he was just seemed really confused. But then people in the party were talking about him at the time that it was happening, and he'd catch snippets of things that people were saying and he'd lose it again. And I remember as I was talking, he kept trying to swing his fist for me to hit me. And just with like really minimal movement, his fists were missing me. It was like, felt like being in the Matrix or something. But I was like, you see, he can't hit me. He's trying his best that he can to hit me, and he can't. And I took him outside of the party, got him out of the flat, and we were on a little narrow staircase that went down from the flat to the ground floor. I was talking to him. He wanted his stuff back. I said, you can get all your stuff tomorrow. We don't know where it is. And I started to walk down the stairs. I was about halfway down the stairs, and he was at the top of the stairs. And I remember him like roaring and jumping off the top of the stairs to try and knock me down the stairs, to jump into my back and knock me down the stairs. And it was just really, really weird the way that he hit me, and I just kind of moved slightly, and he rolled over my shoulders and like fell down the stairs, and hurt himself obviously. But I remember thinking again, see, you knew that is what was going to happen. And it's amazing to me that Yehovah met me where I was. He had the greater purpose. He showed his mercy and his compassion and his graciousness in that he met me in my delusion. And he was steering me through these understandings to an actual understanding of who he was. He knew where I was headed ultimately, to understand him through scriptures. I believed things like this at the time. This is from a book called the Tao Te Ching, which means the way and its power. We know what the way actually is, but that's what the title means, the way and its power. It says, as I have heard, the man who knows on land how best to be at peace will never meet a tiger or a buffalo. In battle, weapons do not touch his skin. There is no place the tiger's claws can grab, or with his horn the buffalo can jab, or where the soldier can insert his sword. Why so? In him there is no place of death. And these are the things that I believed. But at the time, what I was searching for was what was correct, what was the right way to walk. I was searching for the actual connection between the spiritual realm and the material realm. I believed these things, and when I believed them, I would walk in them, even in situations that people would perceive as dangerous situations. To my mind, if you believe something, you walk in that thing. You act as if it is true. You don't just have these intellectual speculations about things. Now, at the end of that year, I lost my job. I've talked before about the job that I had in a company that was selling advertising space in magazines that didn't exist. And I had really kind of come head to head with the company because I just, by this point, was refusing to do anything that was wrong, to my understanding what was wrong. I would go into work and I would just sit at my desk across from where the boss was and basically do nothing and get paid hundreds of pounds a week for doing nothing. Again, that's not righteousness, but I was walking according to what I thought was right, not doing things that I recognized as wrong. And I'd lost my job at the end of the year. This is a place that people might recognize in Liscard. This is the job center. I remember going into the job centre, and the first time that I went there, I realised that if I was going to get money from these people, it was going to involve me being dishonest. I had no money. I would have spent all my money on drugs at the time. I had no money and no means of getting any money, so I needed the job centre to be giving me money. But through these experiences in my life, I was seeing that you couldn't do anything that was wrong. You had to walk in what was right. So I decided, well, I'm not going to accept their money. Went into the second meeting and I said, I can't do this. I'm not going to lie for the money. You know yourself that people are going to be required to be dishonest in at least some way. So I want to sign off, much to the consternation of the advisor, who was like, well, what are you going to do for money? I was like, well, if you walk in a way that's correct, then things will work out to be correct. So I wasn't receiving any money, and at that time, just loads and loads of weird things happened to mean that I was provided for. People would come round with food for me who had no idea of what my situation was. They had no way of knowing that I didn't have any money. Anything that was going on, people would come round with food and give me food. I woke up one morning and there was a cheque that had come through the door for about £250 from a tax rebate. To get a tax rebate, you need to apply for a tax rebate. They had no way of knowing that I was living at that address. I really don't know what had happened there, but I got a £250 tax rebate through the door. And through these things I was saying, well, if you walk in faith in these things and you walk according to what is right and you won't do what is wrong, then these things do work out. This is a picture that somebody drew of me at the time, kind of roughly what I looked like with my shaggy long hair and my dodgy goatee. I used to go to the library that was just around the corner from where I was living at the time, because the art class there would give you £10 if you sat for them while they drew you. This is a picture that somebody drew of me, but I was living out these things that I believed to be right. I was walking according to what I believed to be right. I was studying all of this kind of like these ancient spiritual texts, like the Tao Te Ching and all these ancient Chinese spiritual texts on the right way to live. A friend of mine, Steve Green, gave me this book, The Way of the Peaceful Warrior, which is kind of about similar things. Okay, there's this guy, Dan Millman, who wrote the book. It's a real-life account of what happened to him. We went to a garage, and there was a guy there who he had these spiritual conversations with, and this guy ends up teaching him this spiritual knowledge. He's a guy called Socrates. And there was one part of this book which really fascinated me. Socrates said to him at one point, he said, "Oh, I can't do that." He was like, "Well, why can't you do that?" He said, it's against the house rules. And this idea of the house rules really interested me. I found this on a website called shmoop.com, because I was trying to find out what these house rules were, because there's more books than just this. And they said, to be honest, we're not quite sure what the house rules are, and that's the point. Socrates never explains them. He only refers to them as justifications for why various things have to be done in certain ways. And this is an idea that fascinated me at the time, the house rules, especially, because it's kind of like, oh, what are these house rules that this mysterious man seems to know? So this idea was very much in my head. Well, what are these house rules? What is righteousness? How do you walk in these things? Because I could apprehend from the creation the invisible characteristics of the Creator, that he was kind, for example, that he valued what is good. He was teaching me these things through these dodgy things that I was looking into. I used to read a lot of people like this. This is a guy called Confucius. He's a guy that wrote a lot about how to properly govern people according to virtue. This is the sort of thing that I was reading at the time. This is the Analects of Confucius. It says, Zichang asked Confucius about perfect virtue. Confucius said, to be able to practice 5 things everywhere under heaven constitutes perfect virtue. He begged to ask what they were and was told, gravity, generosity of soul, sincerity, earnestness, and kindness. If you're grave, you will not be treated with disrespect. If you are generous, you will win all. If you are sincere, people will repose trust in you. If you are earnest, you will accomplish much. If you are kind, this will enable you to employ the services of others. Again, he was very into governing people and that sort of stuff. But this is the sort of stuff that I was immersing myself with at the time to try and understand the world, to try and understand righteousness. I used to do a lot of divination. This is the I Ching or the Yi Jing, the book of changes or the book of wisdom. And you can find what situation you're in by combinations of these trigrams, these 3-line things. And you can find out one of 58 situations, and the moving line which is identified shows you where you're at within that situation. And I would spend all of my time doing these Yi Jing readings to try and discern what the righteous thing to do in myriads of situations was. I was really searching for righteousness. I was searching for what was true spiritually, because I could also see that there was a lot of stuff that was taught as spirituality that was just garbage. Psalm 15 verse 4 says, in whose eyes a reprobate one is despised, but he esteems those who fear Yehovah, he who swears to his own hurt. This idea of kind of, if you do these things, even if they seem like they will have bad consequences, if you act according to righteousness, then that is the right thing to do. We see Psalm 119:36. Incline my heart to your witnesses and not to my own gain. Rather seek what is right, and that is the goal, not what might profit you, particularly in that situation. We see it with Jephthah when he swears to Yehovah that he will devote anything that comes out of his door when he returns home and his daughter comes out the door. It came to be when he saw her that he tore his garments and said, "Oh, my daughter, you've brought me very low, and you are among those who trouble me. And I have given my word to Yehovah, and I am unable to turn back." And it was at this time that Yehovah really kind of took me by the scruff of the neck to show me that these things that I was investing time into, actually, that's not righteousness. This idea of you should walk in righteousness at the cost of anything else, that was the grain of truth. But he started to show me that these things were actually garbage and that you couldn't depend on them. I remember doing the Yi Jing one time and being told by the divination that I was doing, stop doing this, you don't know what it is that you're communicating with, which at the time didn't really make any sense to me, because I thought, well, I know exactly what I'm communicating with. It's my higher self or whatever else. There was a divination that I did about my diabetes, about what I should do and why I was diabetic and why I had manifested this reality for myself. And what I was told to do about my diabetes was to stop taking my insulin and to believe and that I would be healed. So that's what I did. Now, if you stop taking your insulin when you're diabetic, you get pretty sick. I got pretty sick. First day, pretty sick, not taking any insulin. I believed though, so I continued. Second day, even more sick, lying on my bed, just feeling really, really rough, vomiting. But I believed, so I continued. Third day, very, very sick at this point. I remember going to bed on the third day and waking up thinking I was having a heart attack. My friends had to call an ambulance for me. The ambulance had to come out and give me emergency medical care, and then I was taken into hospital. And it was just so confusing to me because I thought, I believe. And I stuck with it through this firm belief in the Yi Jing being this way to teach me the path of righteousness. I firmly believed it, so I did it again very much to my own hurt, but believing at the time, well, if I continue in this, then that's what faith is, and I firmly believe this, so I'm going to continue in it. But it obviously threw up a question in my mind. And you kind of say, well, maybe I didn't have enough faith. What does actual real faith look like? But it was Yehovah saying, these things are garbage. These things are not good ways to be. I remember that subsequently the Yi Jing told me to start fasting, to not eat any food. So I had 5 days of fasting, and then I remember just being incredibly weak. I'd never fasted before. It was during this period of time when I was fasting that I wrote the book that I wrote about my life and all of the ways that I'd come to this point. And at the end of the 5th day, I remember doing divination, being told that something was going to happen with the fasting when I was basically divining, do I need to continue fasting? This is quite extreme. And my friend Kaylee came round and she took me out to get some pizza. But then when I came back, the Yi Jing told me to continue fasting, which is not actually quite so easy when you've been fasting for 5 days and then you've had a pizza to break your fast. The last thing that you want to do is start fasting again. So I started fasting again. 5 days later was the time when my friend's dad, Rod, came round, and Christian, guy that ended up taking me to church. And I was talking to him as I was helping him, and his brother Rolly came round to help as well. They're both Christians, and they're speaking to me, and they get out some food to eat for their lunch, and they offered me some, and I said, no, I'm fasting at the moment, which obviously they were interested in. I was talking to them about my spiritual beliefs, and they realized the situation that I was actually in, that I was living in this house, that I wasn't receiving any income or anything, and they started bringing round food for me. I remember that Rod would show up at the door with tinfoil wrapped sandwiches, ham sandwiches as well. But I was doing all of these things thinking that I was walking in righteousness. I was seeking righteousness, seeking to know what it actually was, and I was putting myself in these situations which were actually dangerous, but I was demonstrating faith, real faith at the time, in walking in what is correct. And obviously when Rod came around, that's when I ended up going to the church where I met Charlie, and that was the beginning of me understanding what righteousness actually was. Psalm 119 verse 29 says, "Remove from me the way of falsehood and favor me with your Torah." And this is, of course, exactly what Yehovah did. I was believing in all of this garbage. And that's what walking in faith really is. He met me in that, though. I believe that he would have seen, this is a man of faith. This is a man who will walk according to what is right, even if he's got no idea what is right is. And he removed from me the way of falsehood, and he favored me with the Torah. Because the Torah, to me, it's just this incredible gift. It was so incredibly precious to actually understand what these things actually are. And people will say, well, if we're saved by faith, do we need to keep the Torah? And I just think, you don't understand what faith is. Because if you've got faith, then you're going to walk in that. Can you be saved without the Torah? Well, Noah was, and Abraham was. Abraham followed everything that Yehovah said to do, but he didn't have the Torah that was codified for people. That was only given at Sinai. So can you be saved without the Torah? Yes, but you need to have that faith. And if you've got that faith, then if you know what the Torah says, you will do it. When people don't want to follow the Torah, it's because they don't understand what it is. They don't understand how incredibly precious it is, and that to actually understand what righteousness is so that you can walk in Elohim's favor is such an incredible gift. Psalm 119, 26 to 27 says, I have recounted my ways, and you answered me. Teach me your laws. Make me understand the way of your orders, that I might meditate on your wonders. I was in a situation where I spent all of my time trying to educate myself as to what righteousness was and what faith was and how you live out these things. I did recognize the things that I'd done that were wrong, and I had this desire to change myself. So when I read things like this, they're very significant to me. Psalm 119, 10 to 12 says, I have sought you with all my heart. Let me not stray from your commands. I have treasured up your word in my heart, that I might not sin against you. Blessed are you, O Yehovah. Teach me your laws. And this is why people who are not people of faith will never understand these things, and they'll pontificate and speculate about, well, what if we don't do the Torah? What's going to happen in this case? What's going to happen in that case? Whereas to me, it's so far from my mind that you could ever desire to do that. You don't understand who Yehovah is. You certainly don't have any fear of him. Psalm 119 verse 38, establish your word to your servant, which leads to the fear of you, the understanding of who he is. You couldn't possibly want to stray from it if you understand what the Torah is and who he actually is. Psalm 119, 59 to 60, I have thought upon my ways and turned my feet to your witnesses. I have hurried and did not delay to guard your commands. I was hungry for what righteousness actually was, to be rescued from the mire that I was stuck in of misunderstanding. Oh Yehovah, your kindness has filled the earth. Teach me your laws. And you can understand who he is from the things that are created, from the way that the world works, just really, really basic things. You can understand who he is. You can apprehend his invisible attributes through the things that are created, as Charlie was talking about last week. You are good and do good. Teach me your laws. You can recognize that he's good. You can recognize that he's kind. You can recognize the things that are truly of value in the world. Teach me good sense and knowledge, for I have trusted in your commands. How sweet to my taste has your word been, more than honey to my mouth. And that's the important thing, because to some people, Torah isn't sweet. It's got to be sweet to your taste. You've got to comprehend who he is. You've got to know him. Much more than honey to my mouth and my taste, that these things are sweet too. I have rejoiced in the way of your witnesses as over all riches. I meditate on your orders and regard your ways. I delight myself in your laws. I do not forget your word. Do good to your servant and let me live, and I guard your word. Open my eyes that I might see wonders from your Torah. I am a sojourner in the earth. Do not hide your commands from me. When I read things like that, I think, I know what he means. I understand what he's talking about there. There's some people who don't know him, they don't have faith in him, would never be able to see that. They'll never be able to say, how precious are these things? Anything else in the world, it's all complete garbage. It doesn't have any value. You don't understand what is really valuable in this life. Jeremiah 29, 13 to 14, and you shall seek me and shall find me when you search for me with all your heart, and I shall be found by you, declares Yehovah. And this is true. Romans 3:19-26 tells us a very important consideration in this. It says, and we know that whatever the Torah says, it says to those who are in the Torah, so that every mouth might be stopped and all the world come under judgment before Elohim. Therefore, by works of Torah, no flesh shall be declared right before him, for by the Torah is the knowledge of sin. If I had come to I'd stumbled upon some kind of stream of spiritual knowledge, and it was the Torah written in a different form, and it was just, these are the house rules, JP, and I'd done all of the things on that list, it wouldn't have profited me anything. Well, it would have profited me. It'd be good to walk righteously and do things that Elohim recognizes righteously, but there would be something distinctly missing, because by the Torah we come to see that we have fallen short of Yehovah. But now, apart from the Torah, a righteousness of Elohim has been revealed, being witnessed by the Torah and the prophets. And the righteousness of Elohim is through belief in Yeshua Messiah to all and on all who believe, for there is no difference. This is a lot of what Paul talks about when he's talking to people like the Galatians. He's saying, do you think that you're saved by the law? Have you ever read the law? You've all fallen short of the law. You all need to be washed clean of your sins so that you can walk in actual righteousness. Because I was seeking these things. Well, what is righteousness to walk in? And that has some value. But unless you are washed clean of your sin, unless you have the blood of Mashiach, then walking righteously really isn't going to profit you anything. For all have sinned and fall short of the esteem of Elohim, being declared right without paying by his favor through the redemption which is in Messiah Yeshua, whom Elohim set forth as an atonement through belief in his blood to demonstrate his righteousness, because in his tolerance Elohim has passed over sins that had taken place before. And this is another thing that people just get so incredibly wrong. We're saved now. Are we always saved? He's passed over the sins that came before to grant you the ability to now turn and walk in righteousness and do what is right before him. To demonstrate at the present time his righteousness, that he is righteous and declares righteous the one who has belief in Yeshua. Where then is the boasting? It is shut out. By what Torah? Of works? No, but by the Torah of belief. For we reckon that man is declared right by belief without works of Torah. But if you know what the Torah says and you don't do it, then of course you're not walking by faith in him. By belief, Abraham, when he was tried, offers up Yitzchak, and he who had received the promises offered up his only brought forth son. So Abraham, he didn't have the Torah as given at Sinai, but he was told to do something, and he did it, which is the response that we have now to Torah. Torah is actually an incredibly precious gift that we're given, and if you are someone of faith, then you recognize that. Of course, Abraham was going to do what he was told. Of course, Noach, who didn't have the Torah, when Yehovah said something to him, he did exactly as Yehovah commanded him, which is the only response of somebody who has belief. By belief, Abraham obeyed when he was called to go out to the place which he was about to receive as his inheritance. And he went out, not knowing where he was going. By belief, he sojourned in the land of promise as a stranger, dwelling in tents with Yitzchak and Yaakov, the heirs with him of the same promise. Romans 3:31 says, do we then nullify the Torah through the belief? Let it not be. On the contrary, we establish the Torah. This word establish means to put something on a firm foundation. By belief, do you nullify the Torah? Do you not need the Torah? Of course not. Your belief gives the Torah the firm foundation that it needs to actually bear fruit in your life. Proverbs 28 verse 9, he who turns his ear from hearing the Torah, even his prayer is an abomination. So do you need Torah to be saved? No. You need faith But if you've got faith, then you will do the Torah, because otherwise when you hear about the Torah, you'll turn your ear from doing it, showing that you don't have that faith. James 2:14-24 says, "My brothers, what use is it for anyone to say he has belief but does not have works? The belief is unable to save him. And if a brother or sister is naked and in need of daily food, but one of you says to them, 'Go in peace, be warmed and be filled,' but you do not give them the bodily needs, what use is it? So also belief, if it does not have works, is in itself dead. But someone might say, 'You have belief and I have works. Show me your belief without your works, and I shall show you my belief by my works. You believe that Elohim is one. You do well. The demons also believe and shudder. But do you wish to know, O foolish man, that the belief without works is dead? Was not Abraham our father declared right by works when he offered Yitzchak his son on the altar? Do you see that the belief was working with his works, but by the works the belief was perfected? And the scripture was fulfilled which says, Abraham believed Elohim, and it was reckoned to him for righteousness, and he was called Elohim's friend. You see then that a man is declared right by works, and not by belief alone. So are you saved by works? No, you're saved by your belief. But that belief is dead if it doesn't act upon what is believed. Psalm 119, 1-7. Blessed are the perfect in the way who walk in the Torah of Yehovah. Blessed are those who observe his witnesses, who seek him with all the heart. Yea, they shall do no unrighteousness, they shall walk in his ways. You have commanded us to guard your orders diligently. Oh, that my ways were established to guard your laws. Then I would not be ashamed when I look into all your commands. I thank you with uprightness of heart when I learn to do the justices of your righteousness. By belief, Noach, having been warned of what was yet unseen, having feared, prepared an ark to save his house, through which he condemned the world and became heir of the righteousness which is according to belief. So when we see that Noach was a righteous man, this was his righteousness. He didn't know all of the righteousnesses of Elohim. The earth was corrupt before Elohim, and the earth was filled with violence. And Elohim looked upon the earth and saw that it was corrupt, for all flesh had corrupted the way on the earth. Far cry from this, isn't it? Elohim looked at his creation and saw that it was very good. Elohim looked at his creation and he saw that it was corrupt. And Elohim said to Noach, the end of all flesh has come before me, for the earth is filled with violence through them. And see, I'm going to destroy them from the earth. And that's what we're going to see in the second part, the end of all flesh.